Hi guys, welcome along to another edition of Build with A&E. I am going to show you exactly how to do this. Plaster a ceiling using thistle and multi-finish plaster. So if you've ever wondered how, or you just want to watch it be done, stay tuned and watch the video and I will show you exactly how to do it. So all I'm doing here is just applying a small amount of PVA just to keep the dust down on the coving so it doesn't interfere with any of the plaster. So I've scrim taped all the way around the room. I've gone over all the joints and around the perimeter as well, just to make sure that there's never any cracks. You should always scrim tape over any joint in plasterboard. But I've also done this edge across here just to make sure, you know, because there's two different materials, I don't want it to crack. But what I'm also doing here is taping over the screw holes. Now this isn't actually an essential practice, so long as you fix the plasterboards properly, and when you've used your screws, you make sure that the head is flush with the face of the plasterboard and it doesn't pop through, because as soon as it goes through the paper, then this board, well, the screw is effectively useless. So you need to make sure that it literally is just flush with the paper, so when you run a scraper or a trowel over it, you don't hear a metallic noise. That means it's perfect. So the reason I'm going over this is just in case there are any little bits of movement there. You don't need to, like I mentioned, but if there are any tiny bits of movement on or around these screws, it could potentially cause the plaster just to pop off locally, just in that section where the screw is. So I'm just going over this just to be belt and braces. Like I mentioned, I don't always do it because I know if I've boarded it, I've done it properly and there's not going to be any popping screws. But yeah, in this instance, I haven't personally boarded this ceiling. I know the guys that did are very good and very conscientious. That's why I've let them do it. But I'm just going to go over it just in case. Just to cover myself. There you go, that's it. So guys, I'm assuming that you've already seen my how to overboard a ceiling video, because why wouldn't you? And that you've already gone through the process of getting your plasterboards on the ceiling. So before you skim it, it's really a good idea to make sure that your ceiling's flat, because that way then when you come to skim it, it's going to make your life easier, and also once it's painted, it's going to look a lot better. It's not going to look wavy, it's going to look nice and flat and smooth, which is exactly the look we're going for. Before we set up to skim, we're going to get a bit of bonding on the ceiling. I've had a look round already, and using my straight edge, you can pick one of these up pretty cheaply, or if you've got a decent bit of timber, that will work just the same. Just run around the ceiling and just check. So you can see up here, there's a bit of a gap just in between these 2 points. So what I'm going to do is just mix up some bonding, and I'm going to make sure that I've put the bonding in, and then using this straight edge, this rule, I'm just going to run across like this, just to make sure, like I said, that the ceiling is flat, so it makes skimming an absolute doddle. So we'll go outside now, I'll show you how to mix the bonding up, and then we'll come back in here and get it on the ceiling. So we're outside and I'm going to show you how to mix up the bonding. Before we show you how to mix up the bonding though, I'm going to show you all about making a nice little workstation. So plaster by its nature is messy, so no matter how hard you try, you're going to get a little bit of splashback out of the bucket. I've used some scraps of plasterboard that I've got out of the skip just to protect the area around where I'll be mixing. As soon as you get that drill in the water, it's going to start splashing around a bit, so just make sure that you're protecting wherever you're mixing up. Also worth noting, if you're going to be mixing up large quantities of plaster, or you're thinking of doing this as a trade, you're going to need to invest in some proper equipment, namely a mixing drill like this. Something like this will set you back around £200 odd. It's definitely worth investing in quality tools because they do take a bit of abuse. You can get some cheaper ones. Obviously they're not going to last as long, but depending on your price bracket, just have a look and shop around and see what's best for you. If you're going to be working on site as well, you will need to use 110, so you will need a transformer as well. So here we go. Get your bag of bonding, easy to open. Just give the top a little bit of a shake like that, just to make sure any excess goes back into the bag and not all over the floor. Get a thumb inside here, fingers there, and pull. Easy as that. Try not to rip the whole top of the bag off, because when you go to pour it in, it's just going to go everywhere. So try and be quite nice and neat with this process. Just like that. Get rid of that bit, and then I've about just under half filled the bucket with water. So when I pour this in, I'm going to get just under, it's probably going to come up to about here, something like that. If you're working inside, make sure you wear a mask. We're outside now, so it's well ventilated, but if you are mixing up inside, this stuff is not very nice to breathe in, so I would definitely recommend wearing a mask. Just pour the plaster into the bucket, keep going until you've got a nice mound on top. And then mix away. Nice and slowly at first, so it will be really wet to start with. And you're going to get lots of splashes if you go too fast at this stage. Once it's mixed in the majority of it, a bit more in, and then give it another mix. So you can see it's starting to thicken up, but I still need more. So just keep doing this process until you get to the desired consistency. So when you feel like you're nearly there, just give it a bit of a scrape around the edges. Always make sure you clean any dry bits off. And then go again. Just move your drill up and down in the bucket. What this whisk does is actually rotates the plaster around. So if you just leave it at the bottom of the bucket, it's just going to rotate the plaster at the bottom of the bucket around. So you need to make sure you're going up and down the bucket. Obviously if you're using a smaller bucket, you probably won't have to do that. You can just keep it in the bottom of the bucket. Or if you're using a wide rhino tub, it would just be a different technique of mixing, but you'll soon get the hang of it. Different people want the consistency to be different as well. You may want it a bit runnier, you may want it a bit thicker. It depends on what application you're using it for, but in this instance I don't want it too thick and too heavy because I'm only getting over small amounts like this, so there's no need for it to be really stiff. Give your whisk a nice gentle tap off. Don't go too mad with it. If you start whacking it around, all you're going to do is damage the gears and the gearbox of your drill. This is perfect consistency that I'm looking for. Nice and, well, not too stiff, but you'll get used to it. So just get yourself a bucket of water, get your whisk inside and just give it a quick spin. And there you go, nice and clean. Always make sure that you clean your tools down after every mix, because if you leave this on here to go dry, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to get off. You're going to have to chip it all off. You don't want to leave any stuff going dry on there as well, because if any other bits do come off, they're going to end up in your plaster. And if you get big chunks in your plaster when you're skimming, it's going to cause you a right nightmare, and you're going to curse yourself for not cleaning it off, just spending them extra few seconds just to make sure your tools are clean. So we're inside, my bucket of bonding is ready. I've got my hawk and trowel, as always. Wet down your tools first just to stop it sticking and clogging it. A little bit of material just to prime it up, because if you put your bonding straight on your hawk when it's wet, all it's going to do is it's going to fall straight on the floor. I already know there's a nice little hollow in that area there, so I'm just going to apply some of the bonding and then roll it off. This stuff is quite messy. It will squeeze off the end of your trowel, so obviously make sure your floors are protected. In this instance, we've got a nice little scaffold set up for me so I can get to the ceiling easier, but if you're working off steps, make sure you get some dust sheets down or something like that. You're not trying to be too neat with this at this stage either, because I'm going to roll it straight off, smarten it up after that. So I know my hollow was roughly across there, so just get that on now, and then literally get your straight edge, your feather edge, hold it on your points, and I can see here there's still some more to put in. So it was actually a bit further across, so I'll get a bit more in there before I roll it off. When you're applying it as well, just keep your trowel fairly flat and just work the plaster into it. Obviously as you've got more on your trowel, you need to be at a greater angle, and then as you're coming across, just slowly flatten it out like that. The more you apply the stuff, the more you'll get used to how much you need to put on, and you'll get a better eye for nice straight lines. So that looks about right there. Get my feather edge. There we go, I can see I'm pretty good. There's a little bit. Just zigzag motion across like that, and then that'll drag any high bits off. When it starts spinning up like this, yeah, just take it off and then carry on from where you were. So I can already see that in the middle I need to put a load more in there, and I'm on the low spots here, which is good. I know I don't need any more there, so I can scrape the excess off there and just get that corner down there. And then I know here where I can see the feather edge hasn't touched at all, I need to apply more material in that area. Just like that. It is quite a long process, but it's worth it in the end, because ultimately it's going to leave you with a flat ceiling. It's going to look a lot better once it's decorated. So there's no point going over the bits that I've already done because I know they're flat now, I know that's nice and flat, so I'm literally just filling in them hollows where I can see the feather edge is missed. Some people do like to put loads on, so you only have to go over it once and then rule it off, but I find that's a lot more messy. I do like to do a little bit at a time. It does take slightly longer, but just means you're not chucking as much everywhere. There we go. I've ruled away from my edge, but I can also tell because when you get to here, there's no rule off lines here, so I know that it still needs more to go into this area. So I'm going to carry on now, putting it across. What you might also notice as well is that these are tapered edge boards. If you see here where the edge tapers in slightly, the reason these boards are like that is for dry lining. So basically you just would literally plasterboard and then you would fill the joints and then paint over the surface then. So what that does also mean is that there's a bit of a hollow there. So when you come to skim it, you need to apply more plaster in there. So what I'm going to do while I've got my bonding mixed up, I'm actually going to fill these as well with the bonding. So it saves me the time when I come to skim. Yeah, just like that. So you can see that I've filled that and worked across it, and you can see then it's filling in that hollow already. Right across like that. And also when you're rolling off, you know that area is already flat. Okay, so I've filled that little run in. I'm just gonna fill this area now back here where I know there's still a hollow. Be careful when you go over these bits because obviously it's going to dip in there. So a good idea just to work across like that. So you're bridging across. You can see that it's ruled off. I see I need a little bit more here. I'm just getting that edge down just to make sure there's no big ridges. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to work my way around, get all these hollows filled in, and then I'm going to come back around and then just gently trowel over this just to make sure it's nice and flat. What I don't want is any big dips like this or any raised edges on the bonding, because when it comes to skim, I want it to be as flat as possible so it makes my life a lot easier. This edge is actually pretty straight, but what I'm going to do, because there's a little bit of a gap behind the plasterboard, I'm just going to fill this in with a bit of bonding. That's why I taped as well around the edge. Just helps hold everything in place nicely. You can see where there's a difference in the coving here. This was lath and plaster before, so it was obviously a little bit wavy before, so they've put the coving up on top of that ceiling. But now it is actually flat. You can now see the difference in the coving. There's a few areas anywhere where it's crumbled away, so we're gonna have to do a bit of makeup on this. But what I don't want to do is bring my ceiling line down to this, because it's going to cause me a lot of problems, because this area here is actually really flat. So if I was to bring this down, then it's going to cause me issues over here and have a knock-on effect. So always just make sure your ceiling's flat, and then you can do some remedial work afterwards. So what I'm doing here, just filling this edge in. So I've held my straight edge up across this way, and it's actually really straight, but then holding it across this way, you realise that when it gets to about this point here, it shoot, cut that bit out. It actually dives right up. So what I'm doing now is filling this out, which will actually bring this coving line back in, and then yeah, I'll just roll it off. As you progress in plastering, you get a better eye for it. So I know that this area needs filling out, so I'm not using my straight edge at the minute. I will just check it back in a little bit, but I know you can feel as you're applying the plaster onto the ceiling, you can feel like there, look, so there's a massive ridge there now. So I know that that hollow carries on further into there. And now I know that I've reached the end of the hollow because how it's come flat. So you'll just know with how to apply your trowel, and you just get a better feel of it. The first technique I showed you is where you should all start, and that is the basis of plastering. And I will, again, you know, I'm not saying I'm not going to straight edge this. I will do that, but you get a better feel of how much plaster you need to apply in what places. The more you do it, you just get the feel for it. I can't really explain it anymore. You just know. You get the vibes, man. Working from one side to the next really. Just get a bit on your trowel, squeeze it across the hollow like that, both ways, so then I know there's a majority in the middle, so when I come across like this, yeah, squeezing it out into the joint and leaving the middle filled and the edges flat. Squidge, squidge, pull. It's all about the squidge, squidge, pull. There we go, and then just for belt and braces, go across the whole run like that. Obviously once this bonding's gone off, it's going to go nowhere, but if you were just skimming straight away and you had a whole run of tape all the way across there, you've got to imagine you've got quite a lot of weight on there, especially if you're doing a ceiling which is rolled, because you end up with quite a lot of plaster in that roll. So all that weight, if you imagine you've got this whole ceiling on, for example, and you just nick a little bit of it with the trowel, it can just pull that whole tape off, and then all this plaster would end up down there, or on you, or on the cameraman. Definitely worth just spending a few extra seconds just to split your tape. It's literally like seconds to do it, but it can save you a lot of heartache and a lot of mess. I'm just filling this bit in now. Don't need to, because the ceiling rails will cover this, but again, it's just good practice to do it. Make sure any holes are filled anywhere. We've got no rough edges now or anything like that, no bits sticking up. There's a few little bits here. Not the end of the world. That's it, right, so now all you need to do is wait for the bonding to go off. Definitely wait for it to go fully hard. But if it's still a little bit damp, what's going to happen is when you come to skim it, you're going to end up with a lot of air bubbles. Because as this cures, it creates oxygen, or it creates some sort of gas, which actually creates bubbles in the skim. You can get over it, you can get rid of them, but it's just more work that you don't need to do. All you need to do is just wait a little bit longer until it's fully gone off, and then you can skim. So what I'm going to do, go and get all my tools cleaned off, get my straight edge cleaned off, get everything cleaned up ready, get fresh water, get rid of all the cleaning water as well, because this bonding coat has got a lot of other stuff in it that you don't really want to get in your skim. There's all sorts of lumpy bits in there that you don't want to get in your skim, so make sure everything is fresh and clean, ready for the skim coat. So that's it. I've shown you exactly how to bond the ceiling up. I'm just going to clean off my tools and get ready to film the next part, which will be skimming the ceiling. So as usual, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe. You've been watching me, John, from Build with A&E. Until next time, stay safe.